Manchester Football Social.
This is the Manchester Football Social, the voice of fans, and those fans are you. So make sure you have your say tonight on the latest City and United news and the games at the weekend. Give us a call, 0345 111 7625. That is the phone number, 0345 111 7625. If you don't want to call, you can always text as well, 87711 is the text number to get in touch. I'm Jim, and we're going to talk about the big story in football from the last 24 hours very soon, Raheem Sterling and the alleged racist abuse he received from Chelsea fans this weekend. And maybe the big debating point that comes from all this, if the media and newspapers have a role to play in that abuse that apparently is thrown at young black players in the Premier League. 0345 111 7625 is the number to call. Tonight we've got Stephen McInerney for the Blues, and for the Reds we've got Statman Dave, aka Dave O'Brien. Evening, boys.
Hello, Jim. How are you?
I'm very good after the weekend's football, and we've got a bit of a role reversal today, I guess. For once, we're talking about a Manchester United win and a Man City loss.
Could we have this every single weekend? That would be
I don't think so, no.
Fantastic.
It's like the 90s again, isn't it?
That'd be good. Man United started off very well against Fulham, and it was surprising to see the work in midfield, the pressing, and it was just a bit of a, you watch some games in football and you think, I'm happy today. Like, this put me in a really good mood. A good display. You're looking at the performances of Lingard, Rashford again, Lukaku, Mata. And I think it's been pushed under the radar a bit. This is kind of like a real big improvement of what we've seen from Manchester United and Mourinho.
Yeah.
Because obviously the Chelsea result, Chelsea, picking up a really important win. I couldn't see that coming at all. Like, it was a weird display from Chelsea, not what you expect from Sarri. And I think that may have caught Guardiola out a little bit with the fact that he kind of sat a little bit deep and defended.
They were good. They deserved it. I mean, in my opinion. I say they deserved it. We should have probably been in front of the first half, but their defensive display in the second half, it was a job on us, and it was good, and fair play.
My objective view of both these games for United and City was I looked at the City game, and I only watched the highlights of both, so I know you don't get a fair view of a game from the highlights, but it looked to me, you looked at City, and City played the game that they always play. They had the same possession, They made the chances. Chelsea didn't score till their first shot on target. So City seemed to play the game they always play, but it just didn't seem to work this time.
It's been coming, to be honest. I mean, ask a lot of City fans, and they probably say the same thing in terms of the performances against Lyon, Bournemouth, and other games around that. In the past few weeks, we've seemed to be kind of slowly dipping to our level. We haven't been at our most glorious best. And I put it down to a few things. Maybe down to like mental tiredness and physical tiredness as well, with players dropping off of injuries, and sometimes you just have to have this kind of game to get it out of your system, I guess. I'm not saying I was happy with the performance, obviously, because it's just one of those things, but I can't really like criticism for a lack of effort or anything like that, because I thought they did pretty well, especially in the first half when we, as I said, we could have been in front of a couple of golden chances with Sterling and Sarri in particular. After that, we just lost out to a team that had a better game plan us on the day, so it's just, life.
I don't even think it was a game plan. I think Chelsea just defended really well, and City, the thing that I found interesting, they expect Pep Guardiola to make the right calls. I thought he made some terrible substitutions, taking Leroy Sané off when there's no width on the left hand side, when he was providing that really well in the first half. Is there a fracture there? Is there a fracture between those players? Because you look at the goal, Sané doesn't track Kante from midfield. He has to track him, should be tracking him. You don't concede that goal in a transition if he's goal side in the right position. And it's this weird thing where he played for 8 minutes in the second half.
What do you mean by a fracture? Do you mean whether there's players on the outside?
Sané's an interesting one, where at Schalke he had a bad attitude. It's reported around that he had a really bad attitude, that he thought he was better than what he is, that he's looking as this player as, I can attack, I don't need to defend. And I think we've seen that from the weekend with his lack of ability. And I think it's wrong from Guardiola to have taken him off tactically.
I'd say in general, Guardiola is not one to kind of shirk for making a point, even if it's mid-game, I guess. But I think he's been very vocal and positive about Sarri in the past couple of weeks, because in fact, a couple of games ago, he was tracking back phenomenally. He had one of his best games of the season. But then that kind of stuff about not tracking his running won't go unnoticed. And Pep, if he sees that, he will make a point. I don't know if he was making a point, of course. I can't say that with conviction, but he didn't have his best game anyway, in my personal opinion, even though he was one of I'd say it could have been him or Mahrez that went off, but I guess Mahrez has that ability to kind of just smack one in from the right, so maybe he thought he'd leave Mahrez on because he can produce something out of nothing. But Sané, it's weird one with Sané. Sometimes if he's on his game or not, or he isn't. He's just that kind of person. You can tell within the first 10-15 minutes that it wasn't his day, in my opinion.
And certainly at the start of the season he had a few games that are off the boil, but then seemed to find some form. So I mean, obviously,
it is interesting, that form side. So his goals this season have come against Fulham, Burnley, Southampton, Watford and West Ham. His team's positioned 10th, 12th, 19th, 17th and 20th. He isn't doing it in these bigger games. And for a player that's supposed to be hyped up as the next big thing, you need a little bit more. Because City have spent a lot of money on him. Guardiola is a manager that gets a lot out of these players. And I thought that he was good, but to take him off was a bit weird. Like, similar to Sterling. Sterling's been on fire this season. He had a pretty good first half, but then was anonymous. Like, we've got to look at Eden Hazard. Eden Hazard, who had, I think Edison in the first half had more touches than Eden Hazard, and then he came on 2 assists, wins the game for them.
I think Sterling is a little bit further down the line in terms of, like, I would say consistency than Sane. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that, but Sane's can be extremely brilliant, or then a 7 or 6 out of 10. But that's him, and I don't worry about him in big games, because there are plenty of games when he's done all right. And it was early in the season as well. There's no shame against scoring against those teams, because you have to play him at some point. You have to score. And he didn't start the first 3 or 4 games in the Premier League anyway as well. So the amount of games he could have been effective in big ones, it kind of dwindles a bit. But Sane's an interesting one. But all I know, he's a phenomenal player, and I'm not going to hold him for a bad performance the other day.
When we've seen this little dip, and you mentioned last few games, maybe the level hasn't quite been there for City. Is it just that the beginning of the season, it was unobtainable to keep that going for an entire season? The way City were playing, the level they were playing at, was never going to be sustainable for an entire season.
No form is sustainable, is it, really? So it's one of those things, eventually it's going to have to slow down, and it is always around December. You start making changes to personnel, because we've got 10 games in 30 days in December. I know everyone's in the same boat, especially the big teams in the European competitions, but eventually there was going to be some kind of drop-off in performances, and then we started to see people like No Aguero, and we maybe missed his kind of leadership in a game like this in terms of his just seniority, I guess. And then I guess we could have done with De Bruyne back by now. I know we're very blessed to have a very strong squad, but eventually players do get tired, and there's a lot of kind of pressure, I guess, that comes with being the one kind of running the way. And fair play to Liverpool for chasing us, but I was expecting us to lose at some point. Probably not against Chelsea, for being honest. I felt quite confident, but it was going to happen at some point. But I don't suspect that we won't. I think we will bounce back well. But I put it down to just the Premier League being the Premier League. It's physical, it's tiring, and teams are, it's not as quite as a walk in the park as people suggest.
Again, I can't think that you can't just cover it up as it's just another team in the Premier League, because again, like I mentioned last week, you had 61% possession. You'd created nothing in that second half. First half you were good, but that lack of ability to kick on, and you were dominant. You were so dominant in that first half.
Yeah, we totally
completely outplayed them, and to have that lack of drive, it's weird to see a Guardiola team have that lack of in the second half, where he usually makes it.
Have the answers. I agree with that.
Which is strange.
It happens, but then no one's perfect, and it has been coming, because as I said, most City fans would say that our form has been dropping off a little bit, and it eventually got too much, and once we went behind, we probably just needed some answers that we didn't really have, and then obviously David Silva picked up a little bit of a knock, and then Bernardo's run himself to the ground a little bit, and sometimes people just kind of look around at each other, and maybe they're looking at someone like a De Bruyne or an Aguero. And you think of last season away at Chelsea, it was actually De Bruyne who stepped up and rocketed in when we won 1-0 in the 75th minute. That was a tight game. It was around 75th, something like that. And we didn't really have that. We didn't have the I guess the
talisman, the game
talisman,
changer, that kind of character.
Again, a player that scored this weekend that won the derby for Dortmund was Jadon Sancho, could have made a big impact in this game.
I miss him.
And that is the thing where you're looking at your decisions over the summer, and you've signed Riyad Mahrez and you've let Sancho go, who is just doing so well for Dortmund.
Year and a half ago now, but yeah, I'm a big I agree we should have done more to keep him, but I'm quite a big support of the academy, because I just think football's better with few players breaking through, which leads on to Foden, by the way, signing a new contract. Has it been confirmed officially? I think
it's been confirmed. Contract to keep at the club till 2024, 30 grand a week there. Before we get onto that, though, I'm going to talk to Kerry, who is a Chelsea fan. I thought we'd get the opposition here. She's host of the Chels podcast, the Chelsea Fan podcast. Evening, Kerry.
Good evening.
How are you doing? Are you okay? How was the game for you? Were you expecting a Sarri win, a masterclass?
Oh, obviously, I thought there was going to be no doubt about it, but no, not at all. I'm much happier to be talking to you tonight than on Friday, when we were going to try and talk to each other, because I think you'd have had a very different me on Friday. And no, it was a complete surprise, the result, especially after we'd lost to Wolves last week, and you start worrying about how we're going to play against City, and it was an extraordinary game to be at. The atmosphere was fantastic. City were just so in charge for 44 minutes and then never seemed to recover after we got that goal against the run of play.
Yeah.
You were written off pretty much after the Wolves game. Did it feel like this was a game that you needed to get a reaction from a Chelsea point of view? Because I remember after the Wolves game, I was reading people going, they're never even going to finish in the top four. That's it for Chelsea. Sorry, he's a busted flush. He's never going to do anything. And you got the instant reaction that you needed.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're looking for is some kind of a reaction straight after a bad result. And I think that's what happens with most of the top sides, isn't it? That they go down, lose a game, you see why they are the top sides. And I'm sure City will bounce back after the next game. But we do live in this age where everything is a knee-jerk reaction and everything is in total disarray as soon as we lose a game. And
sack Pep, in my opinion.
Frightening. Sorry?
Sack Pep.
Yeah, well, that's obvious. I mean, we should have sacked Sarri on Wednesday and Pep should have gone on Saturday. So, that's how it works now.
We had David Luiz coming out after the game and he paid City a massive compliment and he said that we've just beaten the best team in the world right now. But then in the same sentence said it's going to hurt their title chances. When you watch City at the weekend, I mean, I'm sure you've seen them before at Stamford Bridge under this Pep Guardiola regime. Did they look like they were still, even though they came away with a loss, did they look in that first half like the best team in the world?
It's always hard to say best team in the world, but certainly one of the best teams around there. No, there's no doubt that we were playing against a very classy City side that really pings the ball around well. I mean, I haven't seen a team press us in the way that they did. That actually, the furthest back player for City in the first half was 5 yards inside our half. I mean, we were pressed so high, and it really was, battening down the hatches and having to stick to it. And, there were a couple of chances which I think Sterling should have probably put one away. There's a great block from Azpilicueta, but we did restrict the amount of chances in the first half when City were totally dominant. But, this was one of those games. It goes either way, and Silva was not a very good thing for you, and without De Bruyne and things, you do realise when some of these big names disappear from the pitch, and you can't even get people like De Bruyne on because of what's happened to him injury-wise, that when you lose Silva, just every now and then, no matter how big a side you are, you will occasionally miss players. And it was one of those games where you needed someone to really come in and go, OK, I'll take over. And I think something happened. Yeah, and I think something happened to City after that first goal. I think it took them by surprise because it was such a fluid move that brought the goal about, totally against the run of play, classic time to score. And in the second half, just couldn't get going.
Kerry, cheers for your call, mate. Thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate that. And apologies for saying she at the beginning of that, because the eagle-eyed or eagle-eared listeners would have spotted you've got a very deep voice for a woman, or you're a man. So
I've been working on it.
Good work. Kerry, cheers for that, mate. Thank you. If you want to get involved, 0345 111 7625 is the number, 87711 is the text number. Just before we move on to United, has that hurt City's title chances? I thought City had this one wrapped up, but now suddenly, almost inexplicably, Liverpool have leaped and they've quietly been going about their business. Now they're top of the league.
No, we didn't have it wrapped up, and I actually tweeted before the game saying we're under a bit of pressure here, to be honest, because I think Liverpool, fair play to them, they're just grinding out results, and it's far too early. Last season we were about 10 points ahead at this point, and it's too early to be saying otherwise. I think, if anything, we need the crosstown rivals to do us a bit of a favour at the weekend. And to be honest,
absolutely not.
And do you know what? You tend to do well against Liverpool, so I wouldn't be surprised. And then I guess the game in a few weeks' time against Liverpool at Etihad is going to be really, really important.
The part with that as well is if you look at the fixtures, so Liverpool play Arsenal 3 days before, then they play City. That's a worry because City can rest in that game. And I think when you're looking at Liverpool, if they're not in form, obviously Salah this weekend, the fantastic hat-trick, but if they're not playing him, who's playing against Arsenal? Arsenal are in resurgence. They're fantastic at the moment, playing some really good football. Yeah, they struggled against Huddersfield at the weekend. Huddersfield are quite a defensive side, but they got over the line, Lucas Torreira scoring a wonderful goal. But I think that will be a huge game for Jurgen Klopp. Arguably, Emery's already beaten him in one final in the Europa League, so it's one of these things where that's going to be the biggest part, and that'll decide the title. Who wins that, who comes ahead, top of the league after those two fixtures.
That's a bold claim. That'll decide the title that early in the season.
So if you look at it, it's over the Christmas period. They're playing like 4 games in in 12 days. It's really rammed.
Wolves and Newcastle. I think Wolves away as well. So it's not. I think it's Wolves away, but I know they're playing Wolves, and it's like who beat Chelsea obviously recently, and we'll fancy the chances against Liverpool. So I think this next 5 weeks is going to be really, really, really telling. I know it's easy to say that. That's a big part of the season, but you know what I mean.
0345 111 7625. If you want to get involved in tonight's show, 87711 is the text number. We've got David online. He's a City fan. Evening, David.
Hello.
So what are you saying? Are you agreeing with Steve? He says sack Pep, Guardiola. Are we getting red?
No.
Was it just a blip at the weekend then? It'll be business as normal when we get back to next week's games.
I think so. I mean, if you look at the first half, we dominated the possession. The ball was moved quickly, as it has been all season. It was just the final ball, the final product, the final shot that was lacking through. Sometimes from poor decisions, sometimes from just not making a decision full stop. And then you had to start, we missed Aguero, we missed Mendy, missed De Bruyne. You had those 3 players in there, maybe that changes the result. But yeah, we can't be perfect every week.
It can't be a coincidence, and I look at it and think City have had this little slump, and in terms of a slump, it's a very minor one. You've lost 1 game and won the other 2. But it's all happened since Sergio Aguero has picked up his hamstring injury. That's a massive miss for City, and it happens every season. Sergio Aguero has this little rest mid-season where he picks up a little injury here and there. So surely Pep needs to go into the transfer market in January and buy another striking option, even with all these goals coming from midfield and De Bruyne and Sterling and Sane all nipping in with goals. Surely he needs another striking option, because it doesn't seem like Jesus has the ability to do that at the moment.
Every goal scorer goes through a period where everything they hit seems to hit a defender or the post or the keeper's pulled off a worldie. Jesus is having that kind of spell at the moment. Even when he first came from Palmeiras, everything he hit the back of the net. I think he just needs a couple of games where he comes off his shin, or he has an open goal, a couple of those consecutively to get a bit of confidence running through it. Even though he looks supremely confident in every game, he feels like he needs goals, and I think Pep has the utmost confidence in Jesus. Otherwise, Pep being Pep would have dipped in.
Would you have started him in the game?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Did it feel like it needed a central focus point for that game?
I felt we should have started him, yeah.
I think it did. I think the main thing that confused matters, was rotating Sterling and Mahrez. I think when Mahrez went up top, we lost all the pace, all the penetration. Whilst that was fine down the wings, Mahrez, as good as he is out wide, he doesn't have that skill set to play as a number 9 or a false 9, however you want to phrase it. Whereas Sterling, he has facets to his game, to his pace, his movement, his awareness of space. I don't think Mahrez is really cut for that. I think once Mahrez went inside, that's when it coincided with Chelsea to get a bit more of a foothold in the game.
David, just coming on, mate. Appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. Cheers.
0345 111 7625 if you want to get involved. We're going to talk about Manchester United's win against Fulham in a minute. Was it a good United performance? Was it just a very, very, very bad Fulham performance? I think it might have been the latter. Just one more issue on City before we go on that. You might have heard that there was some leaked footage from the TV coverage of Rio Ferdinand talking about the performance of Kyle Walker during the Manchester City game. I'll play you the clip now. So this wasn't broadcast footage. This was footage that was somehow leaked. I don't quite know what that means when they say it was leaked. But I don't know. But it appeared on social media anyway. So this is Rio Ferdinand and the rest of the TV coverage team and their appraisal of Kyle Walker for City.
Here he goes, look.
He's done him as well.
Kyle Walker, look.
Kyle Walker sleeping.
Yeah.
Kyle Walker.
Yeah.
That's Kyle Walker. That's why England are going to, if he plays, he'll always be a liability top level.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not saying that though because his mate comes to the gym. Like everyone talks about this Man City team's perfect. It's not perfect. They give you that. You know what I mean? They'll give you that quick attack because Kyle Walker's playing as a winger.
You always know you're going to get an opportunity against him, but you've got a clinical like they've been today.
Yeah.
So pretty damning of Rio Ferdinand. It said in the paper that he slammed him. I'm not sure he slammed him. He just criticised him a little bit. But is that a weak link in Manchester City's team, Kyle Walker? Because he is an attacking player. But on the other hand, he needs to be an attacking player if you're going to get the type of football that you want to see and Pep wants at City.
But the big issue is tactically at the start of the season they were set up as a 3 where Mendy would be the attacker. That worked really well. Mendy was on fire start of the season, and because of his injury, that's the issue. The issue isn't on the right hand side, it's on the left hand side. I agree with some of the things they're saying, but then I disagree with. He's a very good defender. I think they're criticising him overly for the goal that Chelsea scored. Chelsea scored a very direct goal. They moved it from one side to the other. If you're a team that presses, you play over the press, you're at the back centre halves. Yes, they didn't react very well, but it was a very good individual goal that I'd be, again, going back to it, Leroy Sane was the guy that I'd fault the most out of that move, not Kyle Walker. But I think as well, Kyle Walker used to be a marauding fullback that hit the final third. Pep's turned him into a ball player.
Yeah, he doesn't
I don't think that's a problem. And again, you can't blame something that happens within a system. If you press, you can get caught out in that way. I feel it's more of a team thing than an individual like Kyle Walker. And I'm not exactly sure who leaked that footage, but
it's strange, isn't it? That one.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I know. Why hasn't he got the balls to say that on air? Just say it. Like, they're all so polite, aren't they? And cushy. But I can't really. He's entitled to his opinion. I don't think he was overly critical. He's just thought.
I think it's a bit harsh to say that England will never be a successful team because of Kyle Walker.
They went further than Ferdinand ever did in the tournament, didn't they?
Very true.
Yeah, but he's no Gary Neville, is he? Let's be honest with ourselves.
0345 111 76 25 is the number. We can talk about the next Gary Neville in a bit. The next United fullback for the next 10 years, according to Jose Mourinho, and his performance against Fulham. We'll do that next on the Manchester Football Social. Get involved with your say. 0345 111 76 25, and we'll talk to you next.
Manchester Football Social. Subscribe to the podcast now and never miss a show.